Laurie and Jo are like two sides of the same coin, and I think they complete each other in a way, certainly in their youth. I think Jo brings qualities to the table that perhaps Laurie, objectively, one would think has or should have, and vice versa. And in that way, they complete each other. Saoirse is one of my favorite people I've ever worked with, and I feel like I'm often learning from her, and I really appreciate the fact that her energies, her talent as an actress, the way she accesses her talent is so palpable and not like consciously observable, but it's just an amazing thing to be around. And I mean, like I'm not consciously noting it when I'm with her, but it's just over the experience as a tonality almost. It's just, she's so inspiring and she's so talented and grounded. I think Little Women resonates with so many people because it was one of the first books that, even where perhaps works in the past had championed women's rights or ideas that I think scholastically and in general we take maybe more for granted today. It did that, but without the mirror or the alternate reality within the work where that wasn't the case, or with some sort of condescension or whatever. The story is first, and the incredible message came with it. And I think when those two things happen in tandem, that's why it's been made this many times and why it's so beloved. And it reaches across generations. And I know my sister's a huge fan of it, the way my grandmother's a huge fan of it. And I think it's the first thing I said. It was one of the first works and things that men and women alike could point to and go, that's a way forward.
Why this Little Women is so incredibly speaks to this moment in time is because of Greta Gerwig. She wrote it, she adapted it, her deep understanding of the history of the time, but her sort of exuberant embrace of the present moment. She's so spontaneous a person that she kind of couldn't help but make this about young women now. The cast is sublime. The greatest young talents and some of the old talents who kick it up. I mean, Chris Cooper's part and Bob Odenkirk. The men are so human and three-dimensional and felt and wonderful. They're not the center of it, although Timothée Chalamet is unbelievable. He's just got an unstoppable creativity. He's just like a geyser of ideas and feelings, and it's so exciting to see him and Saoirse. But Saoirse is just splendid, and I can't even imagine anybody else as Jo. I think that because of the sort of hard-assed characters that she's played in recent things, people might not have understood the embrace that is that human being. She's one of the warmest people I've ever met. She's just Mother Earth, and she got to be that as Marmee. She is that person. She is that loving, that compassionate, that feeling, and she's really, really funny. I think Greta, because she's an actor, she understands how actors feel free when they feel trusted with the material. And so there was, we talked a lot before we shot, but then you felt free to do whatever you wanted. There was no sort of, you didn't feel fit into one chair or one. Everybody was free to do whatever they felt their character would do. I think that that's the sign of a great director, is that confidence in the people that you cast and work with, that their instincts, if you've cast them because they're going to do the thing that's real and authentic. What Greta has done in her translation of this movie really is a manifestation of her unique vision. She's uniquely optimistic, it's spirited, it's hopeful, it's like a gift to the world right at the time we need it.
Such a relevant story now to show 5 women, including Marmee, who sort of find their own independence and find it in their own way and shape it in their own way. For Jo, she's vowed to never get married to anyone because she doesn't want to give that up, and she doesn't want to give any part of herself up. And I think we're living in a time now where women are finding themselves through their work and then subsequently through their own sort of person, and really feeling liberated in that whole process. And it feels like something that I think we're able to celebrate maybe in a way that we weren't before. And the amazing thing about it is that like that is what happens in the book, and that is what Louisa wrote all of those years ago, and the fact that that's still relevant today, even more relevant today, is kind of incredible. And I think it's a testament to her writing and her spirit as a woman and as a you know, a professional, that she sort of stayed true to that. I think having this wonderful ensemble of characters that are so well written and you can tell have been given so much love by the author means that you can sort of find yourself in them. And I think what we were saying before about it, just the story being sort of so relevant now to the confidence that women have in themselves and in their own sort of taking their own path. I think it's more relevant now than ever. Timothée Chalamet is playing Laurie, and we've worked together before, which I think just really helped for us to settle straight into that, you know, brother-sisterly relationship that Jo and Laurie need to have, because Timmy and I kind of have that anyway. And I don't know, I think like you can see it with actors on screen when they're just physically very comfortable with each other. We're able to sort of hang out of each other and wrap ourselves around each other, and I'm able to hit him whenever I want because I know him. I'd probably do it anyway, but yeah, there's a level of security I think that you can get from just working with the same actor more than once. So that's been really great to work with him, and he's just sort of, I don't know, he always is, but he's very, very brave as an actor, and he's willing to take risk after risk after risk. So that's been wonderful to just watch that again and work with him while he's been doing. One of the things that Little Women explores is a person's relationship to independence and kind of finding themselves in the adult world, and what that sort of means to them. And that's what's so genius about having these 5 different women who are all so different and all do take quite different paths. It's really great to explore all of their lives with them, because they're all, you know, they're fulfilled and they're loved and they're relatively happy, but they've found that happiness in different things. So for Jo, it's her writing and it's her professional career, and that's how she's found herself and who she is.
Women often don't have roles that are complex and nuanced and fully fleshed out, that often they're there to serve the male protagonist's story. They're there to serve a story which is not their own. And I think with Little Women, what is so beautiful is that the girls aren't there to serve anyone else's stories other than their own and each other's. And that's special and unique within the canon of literary history. Control that she gives you over your performance. It's rare for a director to ask you at the end of the scene, are you done? Are you good? You know, do you want another one? Or are you happy? And being able to go to bed at night feeling like you did the best version you could of something, or nothing was left on the table, or there wasn't some other version of it that could have been explored that might have been better, is such a relief. And honestly, it doesn't happen that much. Often it's sort of like, well, gotta go, time to move on, you know, but you're not included in that decision. It's very much the director's decision, but I think the fact that Greta has been an actor and she knows what it's like to be an actor means that she gets it, and she wants you to feel complete within the performance. I think when you're making something as big as this, and you are sleep deprived and stressed and sometimes tired and sometimes feeling the pressure, and almost what's interesting about making a film is you just kind of enter this bubble-like space where you're just so in it that you can't see beyond the bigger significance of the piece. And periodically it's been very useful for me to be reminded, oh my God, we're making Little Women. This is unbelievable, you know, this is amazing. This is so sacred. This is wow, you know. I hope they'll feel the warmth of a movie that was made with so much love and was made with so much care, and that just feels like that warm hug of childhood, of like, I want it to feel Christmassy and celebratory, and there's so much beauty in it and so much depth, and I hope that it sounds cheesy, but I'm going to have to do it because I hope it gives people hope. That's how I felt when I read the book and when I watched the film. Was it just made me feel good that families like that existed and that those values were important still. It's really clever the way that Greta's done the modernization, because she's been really ruthlessly truthful to the text, but she's just played it differently. She wrote all of the lines in the script with these dashes that denote when one line starts and another line should come in almost over the top of it. And like it creates this like symphony of sound, that the sisters should be this kind of, like there should be this sisters melody of everyone talking over one another and it being frenetic and quick and rushed and excited. And it was interesting, a lot of the times on a take, I would see her not even watch us acting it, but she would just be listening to how it sounded and whether it sounded like a piece of music and it sounded right to her. And that was an amazing way to work. And so the scenes have this pace to them that I don't think anyone will have seen before in the way that Little Women is done.
Rereading it now for the film, it's so radical and so incredibly modern. And you know, you're not only are you touched by the family, but for many of us, it was the first time we read a writer describe what it was to be misunderstood and their need to allow themselves to be seen as they truly were. And that runs the gamut from who they are in their nature, who they are in their femininity, in their sexuality, in their ambition, in their longing to be artists, in their interest or disinterest in ever marrying or having children of their own. It was a very radical character in Jo to discover, not only in that period, but any period for all of us, because there is no protection of convention in Louisa's writing. And so I think we're all trying to bring that wildness and spirit to her. Aunt March, who Meryl Streep plays, having a very different opinion of all of it. And so it's really fun to see these different points of view within all the characters in the storytelling. These girls are amazing. And it really helps when I'm away from my daughter to have them close and so cuddly because we've really become a family. Saoirse I knew before socially, and I just love her and love her independent spirit and a drivenness towards self, which Jo has, that I think she really understands and the movie needs, and it's really beautiful to watch. You know, and now I'm laughing all day with Eliza and Florence, who are playing Beth and Amy, or I'm having cooking lessons with Emma, who's playing Meg as my oldest, because I always sort of give her jobs. So we've done more domestic chores and long hikes together, and that's been beautiful. But I've really developed, and they've allowed an individual relationship with each of them. Florence being the sassiest, because she's Amy. She can get us all into a little bit of trouble with her directness as a character, which is so good. She just brings such a great spirit to it. And Eliza, I hadn't known before, but she worked with a director, Jean-Marc Vallée, who I love very much, and he had told me how magical she was, and she's just amazing, lovely, kind, beautiful person. I think the most exciting thing about witnessing Greta the writer in terms of this adaptation is that the moments that she wanted to be the most radical or most available to a modern audience, she would say, I can't believe this. I'm actually going back to the text to use her exact words because it's so modern. And there are lines from the book that have never been said before in a film version of it. And you just realize what a radical she was. It's quite incredible. I mean, there are lines of dialogue between Saoirse and I, and in the letters between Louisa and her mother, where we just think, my God, it would be amazing for a mother and daughter now to speak so vulnerably and radically and openly about what it is to be a woman and talking about one's sexuality and goals in life. It's been an incredible education to witness that. So, but also Greta's brilliant with language as an actress and as a filmmaker, and the rhythm of language and how to make language available. So how she hears things and then directing you through that is a wonderful gift. Portraying strong female characters in any movie is something I really care about. Strong can be very misguided, and strong can be heroic. And luckily, in my life, I have done both, and I hope to continue to do that because it's a blessing as a female actor. But particularly in this film, strong is defined in many different ways, and that's what's so special about Little Women, that she has established strength, strength as ambition, strength as independence, strength as art, strength as marriage and parenting, strength as being an activist. All of those characters and their strengths are shown in those different qualities. And they resent those qualities at times in each other, but ultimately they are their strengths. And that's so cool and so beautiful.
Little Women has been something that's been part of who I am for as long as I can remember. I don't actually remember reading the book. I think it was read to me because there was never a time when I didn't know who Jo March was. And she was always my girl. She was my literary character. She was the person I wanted to be and the person who I hoped I was. And I loved her. And so I'd always had an idea of that character as something I might want to make something out of. It was something that I'd wanted to do for a very long time, and Timothée Chalamet, who is in Lady Bird and is also in Little Women, and obviously Saoirse Ronan is also in Tracy Letts, but Timothy asked me early, before he agreed, I think even, he said, "Why is this so important to you to make?" And I said to him, "Timothy, this may be a more personal film for me than Lady Bird. This is everything for me." And it was something that I went into Sony and I went into Amy and I said, before I had written and directed anything, I said, "You have to hire me because I'm the only one who can do this justice, and I have a very specific idea of what it's about, and it's about women, and it's about women as artists, and it's about women and money, and this is the story I'm interested in telling, and I'm not making it up. It's all in the text. It's part of what the book is. It's just an aspect of it we haven't delved into." So it was something that was just really, really close to the surface for me, and it sounds odd to say, it feels like more autobiographical to me than anything I've made. As I've grown up with the book, I think every time I've revisited it, I've seen something different. I think when I first knew of it, it was very much in the coziness in the realm of childhood. And then as I got older, it shifted, and what I was interested in the book shifted. And then when I read it in my 30s, when I was writing this screenplay, it completely new parts of it jumped out at me. And the part of it that was just in clear relief was how the part of the book that takes place when they're adults is so poignant and so interesting, because it's them as grown women trying to figure out how to honor the fearless youth that they had. And that was the perspective that I started coming at the writing from, which is, if I start with them as adults and then allow their childhood to live alongside them, not as flashbacks, but as two separate timelines. The way when we walk down the street, we're always walking with our younger self. It's not just us there. It's who we thought we were going to be and then who we are. And I thought there was just something incredibly poignant. A fictional family of the Marches, I always thought of them as these geniuses. Like, Beth has piano, she has music, Meg was an actor, Amy was a painter, Jo was a writer. And I didn't want them to sort of treat these things as hobbies, because they don't in the book. They're completely serious about these pursuits. And I wanted Beth, who is so tragic in the novel, to be also, to suddenly, like, I always had this vision of Beth as who's so sweet and so kind. I had an image of her at a grand piano just letting it rip, and then all of a sudden thinking, like, of course, she's just as ambitious as the rest of them. Why wouldn't she be? She's a March sister. She's not inevitably going to die. She has dreams of grandeur, and I wanted that to feel big, and I wanted Meg's dream to act on stage to feel big and like she could have really gone for something. And Amy says in the book, she says, "I want to be great or nothing." That's not a line I made up. And the whole sequence in the book where Amy is struggling with feeling like she's not actually a genius is totally fascinating and modern and interesting. And I felt like I wanted to start from the place of, what if I took all of their artistic pursuits incredibly seriously, because they do, and then what dynamic that is between the four sisters, and how they love each other and there's this bond, but they're also really competitive and really can really get under each other's skin, and they're funny and they're loud and they're mean and they're kind and they're everything. And I just wanted to get all of that in the soup, because to me that's what makes the tragedy and the love so much better, is that they're messy and that they're totally wild. For me, I always heard it as a modern story. For me, it never felt dusty. It always felt like I could hear it clear as a bell. And I think I always go to what it sounds like to me, because that's, I don't know, that's the kind of writer I am. If I can't hear it, I can't shoot it. I have to know. I almost could close my eyes while we're shooting, and I could tell you which take I like just based on how it sounds. And so to me, I didn't have to dig to find the modern piece of it. It was just so obvious to me. And then when I have these great actors, and I have Saoirse Ronan and Florence Pugh and Laura Dern and Eliza Scanlen and Meryl Streep and Bob Odenkirk and Timothée Chalamet and Emma Watson and Tracy Letts, and I could trust them, because as soon as they're given the language, then they become, they make it even, more alive and deeper, and they fill it out. So for me, it was just trusting what I heard to be modern, and then just casting a lot of ridiculously talented people.
Little Women, I think, was the first story that portrayed women as human, as real beings that made mistakes, and also real artistic characters that were in that time, which was not, that's not how women were viewed back then. And I remember when my gran read it to me, how important it was for her to read it as a child, and for her to read it to my mum, and then for my mum, to study it. It's important because it still holds that slither of what it was to be a woman back then, and how we are still facing, things like that of now, no matter how old you are or when you've read it. The most important thing for me about this version that I fell in love with straight away was that everybody's perception of Amy is that she's the sour one, I suppose, in the family that is spoiled, and she has everything and she gets what she wants. And I think what I loved about this is that you really get to see her brilliance, and her sensitive side, and how complicated and human she is. And actually, are we more a little bit like Amy rather than everyone wanting to be like Jo, which is what I thought was quite beautiful about it, really. Sisterly bond is everything. That's the whole book. That's the whole storyline. It highlights what it is to be a sister in that time or this time. They love each other, they hate each other, they talk over the top of one another, they kiss each other, they cry for each other. And it's something that obviously people revisit, decades apart, whether it's your gran that read it to you, your mum or your sister. It's relevant to any age because it's consistent and it's real. Greta didn't want the girls to be in the format that they usually are. She didn't want it to be a classical way of talking, and she didn't want us to be enjoying our space too much. She wanted it to be like sisters. So if you're with a group of girls and you haven't seen them in a while, you're all talking over the top of one another, and there is no time for you to wait, and there is no time for you to listen to what they actually said until you've realized whilst you're doing something else 4 minutes later that they said that. And I think that was what was really wicked about Greta. She, from the get-go, she was like, these are girls. Doesn't matter where they are or when they were born. These are tight girls that are incredibly intelligent and so creative, and they're not going to be standing in their position to finish their line and then wait for their sister to talk. That's not how sisters work. And so from the get-go, like most of our focus has been on the language and how we can make that as relevant and as normal as possible. And and making it constantly flow. It's a constant song, and you're never waiting for a line, you're talking over the top. And that's what's made doing the scene so thrilling. And I think that's the one main kind of major alteration that I've loved about Greta's kind of modern look. It's always very scary coming onto projects like this with that caliber of cast, or just the novel or the storyline. And she just from the get-go wanted to just messy it up and make it comfortable for us, and make sure that, you know, we weren't always in our costumes, that we're half dressed, or that we're, you know, getting out of bed, or, you know, she really wanted to make this as authentic and as real as possible. And that's so fun to have a director that just wants to not have it perfect. And from that, it's created such, you know, beautiful shots and such wonderful crescendo of scenes that's completely down to her. And she's very generous with everything, with her time, with her vision, with her ability to listen and change and help you. And that only creates a free space.
It's a time of discovery. And I think Louisa expresses that perfectly, and the urgency and immediacy of that, and the intensity of those emotions is so palpable in this adaptation. We feel things so deeply, and that's regardless of how old we are. And they will never not be important and valuable and valid. And I think Greta really acknowledges that and pays respect to childhood and what you learn growing up. Greta has this very vibrant and alive energy about her, and I think that comes from a background of being an actor and having a deep appreciation and love for theatre. And I think she's really taken that into the story. So being able to play and really be a family, and that includes fighting and shouting and getting angry, has been really special. And I think Greta has brought to life the childhood of the March family in a way that I haven't seen before. And she has a respect for how childhood has informed the lives of these sisters. The way that Greta has interspersed the past with the present has been really interesting, because you see how the past directly informs who these girls are today, or in the present. And I think Greta as a director has a certain playfulness about her, and she really thrives off letting us play and letting us find honesty in these scenes. And you really can't fake sisterly bonds and talking as sisters and being around one another as sisters. It just can't be, it can't be faked, really. So she really made sure that we got to know each other before the shoot, and she made sure that we had that connection. But other than that, I think Greta has this wild immediacy about her that I love. She's always trying to inject the scene with fun and anger and excitement. Strength can even be found in weakness, and we especially see that with Beth. And strength can be found in vulnerability too, and opening yourself up to feelings that you might not want to feel. And that's just all part of growing up. And I think, yeah, in terms of depicting strong women, That's really what I see in these characters. They're all strong in their own ways. I hope they love it, and I hope they can see themselves in it. And whether you can see it with your best friends or your sisters, it's really the love that they share with one another that I really want audiences to be able to see, and how love can transcend any tragedy and any loss and sadness that comes into your life, and the importance of childhood and how meaningful and powerful childhood is, and how it informs us and how it shapes who we become. It's not this thing that we should shun and put away and hide. It's something that we should celebrate and look back on and see as valid and full of all the complexities that we have as adults.
It's all the girls making their way through life, helping each other to make their way through life, and finding themselves. The girls in the book show, strength and individuality and intelligence in a way that, and engagement in a way that I don't think women were represented very much anywhere. And it's likable and delightful and well written. Girls are the best. My daughters are the best actresses on earth right now. And they're just a joy to be around. I don't know how they feel about me being their dad. Emma Watson is very kind. She says I resemble her father a bit. So that's very nice. I'm inspired by their energy. They're a fun group to be around. They have a great energy and camaraderie together. And it's fun to be around it. Big and her ebullient, intelligent spirit is what makes this different. I feel like Greta informs everyone's performance and the vibe on the set and the humanity in the characters and the strength of the characters. There's some question, I think, for directors about how much you hand it over to the actors, because it's all been in your lap up till that moment. Now there's these other people who are going to bring their influence and their moments and their inspirations to it. She's very, very eager to see that and to let it play out and to let the scene find itself, no matter what it is she wrote. But we're not changing it much. I'm just saying it comes to life and she allows it to come to life. And there's also a simplicity which I connect to a kind of a confidence in her directing. It's going to be a story that isn't political and waving a banner, but is personal, and that you get to see people and feel their journey. And hopefully that'll be inspirational to everyone who watches it, and certainly to young women.
It's one of the only stories ever told about girls coming of age. You still can't think of other ones. It is right up there with Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer and everything else, and yet no one thinks of it that way because girls read books about boys, but boys don't read books about girls. And yet it is one of the most important novels because it is about the experience of being a woman, and it's about the experience of growing up to be a woman. And it takes place during the Civil War, and yet, there's no scenes on the battlefield, but the scenes in the kitchen are just as important. And the lives that they create for themselves are just as important. And I think that people think of it as a movie about sisters and relationships, and it is. But it's also a movie about somebody becoming fiercely independent. The challenge for all of us was to make things feel modern, to make the characters talk in the way that people talk in period movies. They sort of sit like this and no one touches each other and people say things very slowly. And it's though the research that gets done are researching other movies of the period as opposed to the way maybe life actually was. And so we tried to give the movie an incredibly naturalistic feel and a kind of pop sensibility without going 100% into it being anachronistic. It is a modern take on a story about women's choices in life. It is a movie that joyfully represents what it looks like to be a young girl and the challenges it takes to grow up to be the thing that you want to be, and how difficult all those paths are and how rewarding they are, and that you can do it best with love and family. Well-read, well-educated, brilliant, thinking person who also is amazing director. So I probably had more fun than I ever will again until I make another movie with Greta, talking about life, because this book is about being alive. And so it encompasses everything. And she's a really, really thoughtful, amazing, superb talent.